Morning, Brenda. Good morning, David. Wellness Wednesday. Ooh, that reminds me, Wellness Wednesday, I keep throwing books out at you guys. I need to fulfill my promise to actually put together a list, but there's a book by Chuck DeGroat called Wholeheartedness. And it is oh my goodness, it was just a salve to my soul, but it also was just so revealing and so good for me to walk through, just thinking through kind of my divided self, meaning the man that Christ calls me to be, the husband that he calls me to be, the Christian that he calls me to be, but yet who I actually am, and that separation, how does that shrink rather than widen? Just an awesome book to pick up, whether it's on Audible or you want to read on your Kindle or something like that. I just highly would recommend it. Chuck DeGroat is his name. He also wrote the book called When Narcissism Comes to Church, which is an awesome book as well. One thing I do want to recommend, and I actually will be posting later on, we watched it with the kids last night. I know Netflix right now is kind of controversial for some of the stuff that they're putting out, but one of the things that they released just in the past week is a new doc called The Social Dilemma, and it is so good. Now, let me give this disclaimer. If you watch it as a conspiracy theorist, you're going to struggle. But if you watch it as somebody who really has a heartbeat for people, for connection, for relationship, for the way that God calls us to be reconciled, not just to Him, but to one another, and what are some barriers that we don't really know are keeping us from that. And one of the things that I love to quote from it is that we often don't think about how we're thinking. Meaning we just kind of roll through life. We're kind of reactionary. We're very instinctual. Like, in fact, we would like to say that we're separated from the animals, but a lot of times we just respond as they do. But rather taking the time to actually think about what we're doing and why we're doing it is just such an opportunity. And so I want to encourage you that. A couple of prayer requests. One, Mary Friesen, who's on here with us all the time and is a good friend of many of us. She had surgery yesterday, and so we just want to be praying for her recovery. We want to pray for a couple, one of our staff members and some of their family is just badly sick. And with that, they are an at-risk family when it comes to COVID. And so we want to be praying for them because it could be catastrophic if they got something like that. And so, and then the last thing is a good friend that was a long time member, partner at First Free that left a few years ago, but a lot of us have stayed connected with and is a really good friend. We've been praying for her for a few months now, and it looks like she's taking a turn to be with Jesus very soon this week. And so just not only praying for her and her family comfort, but also praying for those of you that know her well and have been directly impacted by this. And just there's a lot of yearning, a lot of heartache. And so I want to encourage you that in that everybody has a story. And so this week, maybe it's your text, maybe it's your email, maybe it's a letter that you write, maybe it's a phone call that you make, that is just kind of that little bit over the hump, that hands and feet hug of Christ that they need, that you're the means by which they know that God is near to the brokenhearted, right? And so I want to encourage you to engage and connect in that way. And here's what's amazing, what I've learned, is I used to avoid circumstances like that because I didn't know what to say. Most people that are in circumstances like that, they don't want you to say anything. In fact, like, it is just the hug, it is just the letter, it is just the, hey, you're on my mind, that actually is what's most impactful and meaningful to them, or just lending a listening ear. Asking them, what are you experiencing, how are you feeling, and actually genuinely empathizing with that answer. And so we read Acts chapter 9 this morning, and Acts chapter 9 is maybe the most famous chapter in the whole book. It's where Saul turns into Paul, right? He meets Jesus, and in that his life is completely transformed. But there's a verse 15, that really sticks out to me, where in the midst of the fear, in the midst of Saul's reputation, in the midst of how the chapter opens, that Saul continues to breathe out threats and murder. Not just one time that he commissioned the murder of Stephen, but he's a murderer multiple times over. In fact, today he would be called like a mass murderer or a serial killer. And then it says that Ananias is afraid. I don't want to go share the gospel with him. What if he does something to me? And God says, for he is my chosen instrument. And it just made me think about how all of us, no matter how far away we are his chosen instrument. That he's picked us maybe not to be Saul to Paul, but he's picked us to go to others, to love on others, to share the good news, to come in the name of Christ, to be that comforting presence. Like Joanne just mentioned, I'm so sorry that your aunt passed away this week from COVID yesterday. And so to experience that comfort from God that it talks about in 2 Corinthians 1, that may be the means by which we are a chosen instrument. To be hospitable, to be kind, to be gracious. And so just want to offer that alternative to each of us, rather than being opinionated or being a preacher and having something to say all the time. I found actually that it's much better when I just sit and listen, that I be present and be still. And so I was posed this question to me yesterday, and I've been pondering it. Are you a human doing, or are you a human being? Like, are we so frantic with activity, so full of movement, that we're not present with Christ and with others? So God, I pray this morning that you help me to not just slow down doing things, but that you help me to become more aware of those around me, of the conflicts inside of me, of your Spirit's work and confirmation and encouragement. Help me to be more aware of your presence. Help me to notice smaller details. Help me to notice people, to love people. God, cultivate and tenderize my heart. God, I want to cry today for someone. I want to laugh today. I want to have all the full spectrum of the emotions that you've given me. And I want to see them used for your glory and your renown. So God, we want to pray for Joanne. We want to pray for Carol. We want to pray for our staff, for our families, for those that are beginning to be impacted, Father, as maybe we're flattening the curve, but behind the curve. I want to pray for the way that we engage in social media and the way that we talk around the cooler. And I pray that you guard us from things like groupthink, that you guard us from fake news, that you would guard us from promoting propaganda, but rather that often we would just be powerful in our presentation of the gospel. Not with flattering words, not with loud voices, but rather with just genuine, deep love. Love that you've loved us with. So God, we thank you for that. We thank you that you've changed us and transformed us. And God, we know that you want to use us to transform the world together. And thank you for that. It's in your Son's name that I pray. Amen. If you've got any ways that I can be praying for you, or anything specific, shoot me a message, shoot me an email. I've been getting a chance to sit down and have some coffees with some folks, to have some email correspondence, some text messages. It's just been so good and sweet. And so thank you for that. And I'd love to be able to do that for you, and you do that for me as well, okay? Love you guys. Praying for you. Pray for me.